Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. And I hope English is okay because my Arabic is unfortunately not good at all. Thank you for being here. I know it's an exciting summit. There's so much happening outside. I just saw Morgan running to the other side. So I can well imagine, and I appreciate you choosing to be in this room today. It means a lot. And while I'm curious as to what brings you here, I can tell you that it's a huge honor for me to have this opportunity to share with you a little bit about my journey. And why it's relevant when we're sitting here amongst such wonderful professionals in so many companies is because I think that I represent perhaps the tiniest company of all, a small little production company out of India called Emmay Entertainment, which was founded by myself and along with two of my partners in 2011. And the reason I talk about it with some humility is because despite our size, we managed to be the David that challenged a lot of Goliaths in our business. In India, as you know, Bollywood is something that is synonymous with our country, with our culture. And to be able to make a success there, it's not something that comes very easily. It's also a multi-generational industry. In a sense, I could say I'm a product of some nepotism because my entry into this business was because my brother is a filmmaker. He's well known for having made films like Kal Ho Na Ho, films like Salame Ishq. But he was lousy at being a producer. And that's where I came in. And that's my journey, the start of my journey as a producer. Before that, I was in human resources. And you're going to turn around and say, what is a person from human resources doing in the big bad world of Bollywood? Well, I'll tell you this. I ask myself that question every morning. And the reason for that is because human resources is a very structured professional sector. And Bollywood, on the other hand, content creation has the ability of being so amorphous that it can sometimes overwhelm you. And sometimes it can be one of those things that makes you the happiest. But let me dial back and remind you that most of us who choose to be in this business did not come out of our mother's wombs wanting to be part of this industry. Most of us accidentally made our way into this wonderful world, as we heard Saif Ali Khan talk about it a few minutes ago, and talk about how he made his way into Bollywood. We got into the idea of making movies, telling stories, this magical world, because somewhere it touched our lives. Somewhere it became a source of inspiration. And how far it is from that romantic world when you actually come down to making movies. I'll give you a simple example. My first day at work in my brother's office, I walked in, having sold my previous business, which was a successful HR company, to a large multinational. And so I said, you know, I'm this hotshot entrepreneur. I know how to set up businesses. And I walked in, and I saw that his office, which is probably the size of this auditorium, half of it was his cabin, and the other half was where 99% of the people in the company were working. And now I realized very quickly what was wrong, what I had to correct on day 2. The ego could not be the size of the cabin. We had to bring it down to size. So the next day, when he came in with his team, he saw me breaking down the wall. And he says, what are you doing? And I said, well, this is how we're going to do business. We're going to be having no walls. We're all going to be responsible for what we bring into this office and how we make a success out of it. And he looked at me and he says, well, that's not how we do business. I said, well, that's what's going to be different about Emmay Entertainment. We're going to teach people to do it differently. And we've done that because today we are responsible for titles like Airlift, which we shot in Russell Khaimah, titles like Bazaar, which was a big success with Saif Ali Khan. We have, to our credit, shows like Rocket Boys, Mumbai Diaries, which you'll find on Amazon. We have 34 titles, Mrs. Chatterjee versus Norway, a number of them that we've done, which have been critically acclaimed as well as successful financially in the box office. What did we do right? So besides deconstructing the ego, I think the second thing that we did was we became a Monday to Monday company. Now you're going to say, what do you mean by Monday to Monday? I'll tell you, the uniqueness about this industry is that it is so self-deprecating as much as it is about self-effacingly becoming more and more vain. On a Friday, when your movie releases or your show drops, and if it isn't a success, you yourself write your own epitaph and you decide, that's it. I'm destroyed. I'm shattered. Well, I should tell you, things didn't start out that great for us. Our first outing was wonderful, but our second and third outing were terrible. In a span of 1 week, I had 2 massive flops, movies that were just forgotten and put to the other side. On that Monday when I went to work, nobody came into the office. And I was wondering, why is nobody at the office? And my brother comes in very sheepishly, and he says to me, he says, Manusha, we have a problem here. You know, I'm feeling bad that I made you a successful businesswoman come into this industry, and you've seen failure, so I can understand if you want to leave, and we'll just shut the company down. I said, how can a bad day at the office be the reason that you don't want to come back to work? I said, this is not how it works. In any other business, we all have bad days, but we come back to work. And so I made it a point to tell my team that from this day on, we will be a Monday to Monday company. Irrespective of what Friday does, we will come back to work. So they said, that's great. It's a great philosophy to have. But what are we going to work on? Nobody wants to work with us. I thought again, and I realized where we had to get our second learning. The second change we made was we invested in scale. I said, we need to do as much as we can of all the work that's available, and we're going to bring that into this office. And they said, who's going to work with us right now? And here's the interesting thing. There was this thing called the digital economy that had been at the doorsteps of India, but India was not looking at it. And I said to them, I said, you know what? There's going to be platforms like Netflix, Amazon that are going to come in, and they're going to need content, and we're going to go to them. I still remember my friends who were heads of massive studios at that point, Disney, Fox. They looked at me and they laughed. So much so that my partners turned to me and said, you know, will you stop talking about this digital thing? I said, no, I'm not going to give up, because they're going to want people to make movies for them. They're going to want people to make shows for them. And we went and we pitched to them. Today, we represent 12% of Amazon India's content year on year. We represent 8% of Netflix's content year on year in India. And that's not small. Sony, we have a great partnership with them. 2 of our shows, both are international Emmy contenders there. This has been possible because of the fact that we did not turn our backs on taking on new work and new technology. Which brings me to the next lesson that we learned. We learned that it was important to embrace technology so that we could bring in efficiency. The one thing this industry, unfortunately, suffers from is a lot of wastage. There's a lot of overindulgence that takes place, and I'm a tough producer, but I'm not an overindulgent producer either. I turn around to my creators and I say, I'm going to defend your ideas, but you're going to learn how to do it efficiently. Because whether we like it or not, the consumer that we are catering to today loves to be hypnotized by a screen that is larger than this as well, but is consuming 90% of their content on a device that's the size of a palm. And if we don't realize that our arrogance of wanting to see large screen scale tech design is going to eat into our budgets, we will very soon find ourselves going obsolete. What's in the foreground is always important. What's in the background is additional. So I think it's important for producers to prioritize. These are some of the lessons that have helped us make Emmay Entertainment one of the top 5 production companies out of India. But that's not the reason why I wanted to come here and talk to you today. I came here today because I want to tell you that all the tailwinds that we have used and had to our advantage in the last 10 years has changed. There's a massive contraction taking place. The very vanity, the very arrogance with which we have operated as producers has to be set aside, because our billion-dollar budget content is competing with a click of a button on the attention that is given to a cat in Milwaukee that's dancing to K-pop. I sound trivializing when I'm talking about it in this manner, but the fact is, if we don't become sensitive to the fact that the creator economy includes us and is not excluding us, we are very soon going to be putting ourselves out of business. So as creators today, as future producers, as producers who are in the business today, please look around and take every form of content coming the way of that consumer very seriously. Not because it's competition to you, because you need to find a way to own that yourself. There is a need for us to make ourselves available to every shape and size of content. And that is one, how do you go about it? I think it's summits like this, where you're seeing the presentation on technology, on AI, on using cameras. I mean, I remember cameras used to be massive. In these 10 years, I've seen the size of a camera shooting a very high definition 8K show, literally the size of a palm. It's only the arrogance that tells people that we need to have large equipment around on our sets. I think it's important for us to also appreciate where we are. Dubai is very, very important to the future. When I was a young girl, everything that I learned was that the West is where it's at. The center of my universe was the UK, was Europe, was Germany. Today, it sits right here in this region. We're all here because you know what drives your economy? The economy. That's what drives Dubai. That's what drives the UAE, this region. It's completely driven by economic achievement. Ideology is something that is personal. And I think that differentiator makes this region a very important place to become the center of excellence, of innovation, of experimentation, to bring about where all this technology that we're talking about, what we're talking about, new processes, embracing creators of all sizes, I believe that is possible from here. Another thing that can be possible from the UAE is funding. And I don't mean passing around a hat over here. One of the things that's escaped and evaded creators and producers because of the fact that we function in silos of a gig economy is getting institutional funding. Today is the time where we need to all integrate and we need to find a way to create more and more ability for institutional funding to back content that is being produced by individual producers, by individual creators. Because believe it or not, even Superman was an idea in one man's mind, which turned into a comic, which turned into a movement, right? So we have to realize and recognize that going back to those foundations, to that fundamental belief in that one single thought and idea and allowing everyone to have that ability to express themselves is where Dubai can become a very, very vital part of that economy. I can go on, but I want to take some questions from you guys. Anybody over here? Please.
Thank you. First of all, your story is incredibly inspiring, and I love the way you tell it. And congratulations, because what you've accomplished is no small feat. So, you live in one of the most competitive places in the entire world. I just heard someone in the previous talk about South Asian content as being niche. I think they forgot what your population is. So congratulations. I'm very curious about this element of how did you start up and how did you get support from a funding perspective in a market that is incredibly saturated and super competitive, especially when you didn't necessarily, I know you talked about nepotism at some point, but you didn't necessarily have the work experience for it. I'm curious about funding and network specifically.
Thank you. Very valid point, and thank you for your kind words. I needed a little bit of encouragement. I'm not usually on a stage like this. Funding for my first project was very difficult to come by. It took us 2 years, and passing around a hat almost came to that. But at that point, honestly, we had managed to greenlight a film with a really top star cast. And that film never happened because the director went AWOL on us, and I was suddenly sitting there with nothing to do, where we had one of the most promising titles we were fortunate to be able to pull off. And I had 200,000 pounds of that studio who had willingly backed those top actors. And I turned to the head of that studio, who happens to be actually a funder from Dubai, interestingly. And I said to him, I said, well, if you have the faith in this team to have pulled this off with a cast which was as great as this, then trust us and give us a chance. So really, you have to find that angel of investment in the first instance. What was important for us was to make sure that we really stretched the dollar. And so we innovated with the casting. We innovated with the way we went about making that film. It's called D-Day. It was a bit controversial. That helped. Controversy always helps in our business. There's no such thing as bad controversy. The film went on to become very iconic. And then we squandered that, that fame that we won with great difficulty, that appreciation. It was squandered in the next two films that we did, because we got arrogant. And we went and raised money from two other studios. And both the studios funded us. And they said, yes, yes, these are the guys who made D-Day. They're going to make these two films. And we bombed. And we were back at the starting line. So that's the thing about, I don't know if you were, as kids, if you ever played Snakes and Ladders. I often find myself playing Snakes and Ladders. But it's my internal fear. I can't share that with my team because I need them to come back to work on a Monday. So on a Friday, when we brace ourselves for how the box office is going to treat us, I try and say a prayer. But I also know that I have to ensure that there's work on Monday. And so we distract people and tell them that get back to work and get back to work on other things. If we have a good day, I can assure you the celebration is great. But it's only on a Friday evening because Monday we're back at work. Yeah, Hamda, please.
We touched on this a bit when I spoke to you outside, but I really want to know your opinion on moving to digital, moving to streaming. Do you think it's killing the industry? Because I miss going to the cinema, basically.
I think cinema, good question. And I think cinema is one of those things which is so romantic, right? When you go to a theater, you enter. The smell of the air conditioning is filled with popcorn and sweat. you can't escape that. There's something so enigmatic about that when that air conditioning comes in. And you sit down and you hold your chair. And I know Saif said that you know what's going to happen, but you still want to have that entire experience. But it's an experience that you go for once in a while. Even if you are the most avid cinema goer, you'll go for it once in a week, as versus the convenience that digital provides you. Because content, has become oxygen. Content has become oxygen, which, interestingly, most of us don't want to pay for. We want to have it for free. It's like what Wi-Fi was some years ago. If you remember, you'd go into a hotel and you'd be sitting with a guy and telling him at the reception, hey, the Wi-Fi better be free, huh? The Wi-Fi better be free. It's the same thing with content. We are competing, and it's not that we haven't subscribed for Netflix. It's not that we haven't paid for the ticket at the theater, but we'll still get completely hypnotized. And we'll be doing the doom scrolling because it's free content. We think so. There's data that's being used that we are paying for. There's advertising that's interspersed there that we are subliminally paying for. But the fact of the matter is, content today is oxygen. And so I think that rather than trying to resist it, one has to embrace it. One has to see the benefits of it. I think we are far more an evolved society today because of it. I think that as much as there are divisive forces and divisive use of technology as well as content, I think there's a greater power of integration that's taking place, thanks to the fact that content can't be held within walls. It's something, like I said, like oxygen, it finds its way to all of us, and we share those ideas. We dress the same way sometimes. We want to go and buy those same sneakers. Everybody wants to be a sneakerhead suddenly because, you know what? We saw all those reels about it, right? So I think content and the digital economy, I don't think is going to put theaters out of business, but it's going to make it more and more valuable to go to a theater. And I think I have my views about, as a producer, I cannot have a business model that is in isolation working just for the theater. If I want to be a producer of reckoning, I need to find a way to be in the minds of that consumer in every way. And so I need that mind share with every size of content I can participate in. Yes.
Please go on the stage, please. Hi, Manusha. I've always been an admirer of how you articulate your thoughts, and I didn't want to miss this opportunity. We have flown down from Mumbai. We are in this region. This event is so important. I wanted to pose this query to you. Everyone keeps talking about funding, keeps talking about an ecosystem. What is your viewpoint? How can we actually get stories in a structured format where collaborations can actually happen between regions? Because the emotions are the same, the understanding is the same, but no one really delves into the matter of having a structure where we can have stories in one place. And you and me have been at for the past a decade or so, have been thinking of creating IPs, which we have in our own self. Can you give some direction? How can we have IPs and stories in one place where people can dig into it and actually create original scripts? Sequels are good, but there's no originality. Thank you.
Thanks, Afsar. And a really good question. And I'll tell you, this actually has prompted the thought for a conversation that I was having just outside the tent here right now with another fellow filmmaker who's from the UK and who said, you know, I'm trying to get in touch with filmmakers from India and I'm not able to, though we are working for the same platform. But you're in India and I'm in the UK, but we are told by the platform not to work with each other. And you know, we have this kind of colonial borders that are being created, which are so outdated, not just in geopolitical systems, but also in corporations. And I think that if we have to collaborate, I think the most important thing is we have to stop looking at things backwards. The business of content starts, unfortunately, right now by looking at what is the budget that a platform or a studio is going to give us. And in exchange for